Hello world, Podler team is back at it again, doing more voicing training, track 2 training, where we take the theory principles of Podler. There are quite a lot of them on a wide range of topics, and so we have them in theme sectioned and then divided up into pithy beats, little nuggets of knowledge. We are now fairly far along with it, and we are on the theory CnC. Okay, so introductions, we'll get going. I am Nige Coach. With me, I have Nige Mitchell, Ben, Glenn. Let's get to it. All right, we've kind of set the scene here a bit. We're going to finish that off and maybe get into some of the stuff that's out there. Okay, so Ben, how does a desire for a sense of posterity often show itself? When is this problematic? How does a proper heroic pioneer truth seeker address this aspect of the human condition?
Humans have an innate desire to possess a sense of posterity which needs to be accounted for. This most often shows itself in the form of a person wanting the highest truth they have found in their lifetime to pass down to future generations. This becomes problematic when it gets to the point where a person is less interested in helping highest truth flow through their generations than they are preoccupied with not wanting to be left behind and be able to still exert influence after they have died. A proper truth seeker understands that they are never left behind if they're helping the highest truth flow from them without envy towards those who will carry on the quest for highest truth when they're gone, which must include acknowledging that future generations will always need to update the understanding of highest truth given to them by their ancestors. All right, I think I can do this.
All right, go for it.
All right, so humans have an innate sense of posterity that needs to be accounted for. And this often shows itself in the form of humans wanting the truth, what they've found in their lifetime, and their influence to be passed down to future generations. This can get out of hand when a person is so preoccupied with this, because like it is actually impressive when you're actually able to, you know, in a heroic way, you know, have influence over like future generations. That clearly shows you must have done something really amazing, right? Or something really significant. But it can get out of hand when you're just preoccupied with having that influence as opposed to being preoccupied with, you know, serving highest truth and making sure, you know, they can serve highest truth. Because there's unheroic ways you can exert influence on future generations as well. I mean, there's been a lot of villains in the past too. There's been a lot of people who, you know, could have been more heroic but didn't. So it's important that we recognize that, you know, what we contribute to future generations should be the purest and best that we can, and that we should acknowledge that future generations, in order to move forward, will eventually have to grow their understanding past what their previous generations gave them. So a person serving highest truth will acknowledge the fact that that's eventually necessary, and acknowledge the fact that the ultimate goal isn't just to have influence over future generations.
Nice.
Right. I'm ready. So, a sense of posterity that humans is one of the 5 senses we talked about that humans have. It can be a good thing, but it can go wrong. And one of the areas that it will show itself is in most often wanting to exert some influence after a person has died, because they have some highest truth they discovered, and they want that to be dealt with in a certain way, or I guess you'd call it that, after they're no longer around to do that for the future generations. And so this can be a problem when that exerting influence from beyond the grave is more important than actually letting the flow of the highest truth and its discovery go smoothly through future generations, including the updates that they will inevitably need to make. And not necessarily in all cases, but at least some. And a proper heroic pioneer, truth seeker, addresses this by understanding that they shouldn't be envious towards people who are going to go on to that, or besides just envious too. I guess another thing I would mention is like kind of like a lack of faith, like they're not going to do the right thing. So the best thing you could do is to train people to do what you think that they should, and teach as you need to the truths that you've learned, and then they're going to need to do the updates they need to as their own heroic truths, heroic pioneer truth seekers, chosen ones of their own heroic stories. Yeah, you're almost kind of taking that away from them a little bit, and you're turning them into like automatons of the truth that you've discovered if you don't do that.
Word.
Right, I think I want to try. Right, so the desire for a sense of posterity oftentimes shows itself in the sense that a person will have truth that they've accumulated in their lifetime, and then they'll want to pass that down through the generations after they've died, after they're no longer alive anymore, and it's several years into the future, and they still want to feel as though their truths that they discovered, whatever they may be, are still relevant, essentially, and they're still influencing people, and people are still reminded of this person and their contributions that they made. This is a heroic desire innately, but it can go wrong, and when it becomes problematic, it's usually when the person will put that desire to want to be remembered, to want to be relevant, to want to have that posterity and exerting one's power and influence throughout time and space and stuff like that. They allow those drivers to basically take over, and it's no longer about trying to actually find truth anymore and trying to find highest truth and share that with people. It becomes more of a desire to want to stroke one's ego, knowing that I have truth and blah blah blah, and so it's all about me, and everyone has to acknowledge me for the rest of the time. So a heroic truth seeker, a heroic pioneer, will understand that can sometimes be problematic, and they're going to try to always make sure that they are looking towards trying to achieve highest truth, because they understand that they're never going to actually be left behind. Everybody that has come before has contributed to our understanding, our wealth of knowledge of what truth is, and they lay the groundwork for the future generations, and then from there they will walk that path, and then they'll go even further than the generation that came before. And it's constantly a process of finding highest truth and understanding that one is simply trying to help that whole process be the best that it can possibly be. understanding that they are not the one and only blah blah blah, that they are merely one of several, and trying to always push the overall understanding and wisdom of the entire conscious race of life move forward. And that's the highest goal, and that's what one should always be striving to want to try and do. Yeah.
I'll just mention there's the desire to have the posterity. One part of that is, I guess, like I said, that envy of a future generation is going to get to see things, experience things that are beyond what is here now. You're kind of envying that. I experience it sometimes. We're like, oh man, future generations are going to wake up, just temples everywhere. You know what I mean? Rosetta Stone right there by their nightstand. You know, since they were early kids, like, that must be sweet. You know what I mean? But what my spirits tell me is that everyone has their moment in time, and there is a potentiality of greatness and wonder and joy in that time, and it can't be measured by anything else. So for right now, we're discovering the Mojo phenomenon, and there's a kind of wonder and joy and excitement and challenge to that that's unique. It won't exist now. And the future generations, they'll have different moments in time. Part of that is they'll be working with our work further on. They'll be working with later models. That's the cool thing they have to do. But they'll have their own challenges that'll go with it. So everyone can be measured by how much of the seeker they were being with what they knew at the time.
Right.
And if you're doing it right, then you should know more and be doing better from when you started to when you end. And that's how you should teach next generations to be. And as a part of that, you'd have to get you like, oh, here's this thingy, and we're really good at using this thingy. Okay, well, here's the history of the thingy, a history of progression. And here's where we are now. And here's how you do it well. And hopefully someday you'll actually take it the next leg forward. Right. This is a big thing. Anything that's really good, as far as a way of thinking, should have reformation built into it. Counterintuitive because people go to omni models in life because they want sureness. But ironically, you have to have reformation built in, or it's snake oil.
Reformation. What does that mean exactly?
Basically, updating.
Updating, right?
You have to update the model. They just call it updating in science, but in spiritual models, you usually call it reformation. But it's the same thing in the end. You have to update. You have to go, the next version that is better than the one before. Now that you've lived that version for a while, you know stuff about it, and now you can make the next better one.
Yeah, there's many different interpretations to the Bible, right? Like they have these kinds of that was before time. This is the revised. We're still believe in these ideas, but we put our spin on it in this kind of a way.
It is, and those spins they take root over time if they have something to them, and then they can become the next version. But anyway, there's that envy, and really doesn't serve anything. Because there's actually your moment, and really, you'll always have it over future generations. Future generations will never have our moments.
They never get to discover the Mojo phenomenon.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's amazing. They're not going to what was it like to figure it out for the first time?
That's why I emphasize that joy a lot, because that's a joy of us. We get to have that as part of our work. And the future generations, they get to go, ooh, I was born the first generation to have a truth beacon given to me as a baby. As a baby, I was given one. I was given a nice shiny one from the store.
You know what the thing is, people look back in time and they think that these people they discovered it and it was given the hardships that they went through, and they kind of idolized some grandfather kind of figure whatever. And then they had it much harder. They had to go through stuff like that, and so that's kind of an aura that kind of.
It is. Yeah. It's earned and it's well deserved. There's actually another thing that goes with it that's also deserved, which is they only had in the future they're gonna have gazillions of samples. They only had how many samples? 60,000, 20,000. That's so primitive. So it goes both ways. The upside is we have the glory of discovering these, but they're gonna look back and that's like DOS.
I mean, the way I conceptualize it is
basically a Word document in the beginning. That's insanity.
It's bias.
We're basically you know, we're basically like computer scientists from like the 1950s and 60s. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
basically like the phone in your back pocket, like to them would be considered like a supercomputer. It's like
Totally. And so you get props both ways to be proper, which is that was pioneering work. That's amazing.
Yep.
They were actually taking the flame of technology out into the abyss. That's what we're doing. That's awesome. On the other hand, they thought a lot of things back then based on early machines. And they didn't really conceptualize nanotechnology and whatnot. And we have that now. So respect what they did. And on the fundamentals that are still proven true, we still use those and give them props. But on stuff we now know more than they did that makes this look different, we'll go our next generation. And they should. And we should teach our children and people that are going to be here beyond us that that's the way you want to do it.
Right. I sometimes envy like people that came from the 1920s, that time, you know, like the golden era of this or the silver era of that or the bronze age of comics or whatever.
I'm not just saying this though. I think in all the ages you study history, the Mojo Phenomena discovery, this would be one that I think a lot of people like, that must have been crazy. Honestly,
the golden age of consciousness.
I've studied this, and I don't think this is overstating it. As far as a bigger change, I would equate it with fire, discovery of fire. And this is not, just like discovery of fire was not done overnight. We're at the tipping point now with the quality phenomena, but really there's been thousands of years pushing to this point of self-awareness. We've been getting more and more self-awareness with media to help us teach self-awareness, and bam, fire. So basically, yeah, there's the programming. So, because basically we got fire, that, I don't think there's any disagreement on this, many scientists or naturalists, that was the hack. That was the hack that gave our species just this crazy advantage. We have lots of other ones, you know, standing up on two legs, the opposable thumbs, that was cool too. But when we got fire, because up till then we used tools that were like, you know, a little bit better than that. They're like a spear that was like a big claw. But fire, that's magic. That was like, oh, we can boil water, and we can tan hides, and we can keep light, and we can, like, it basically put us a whole other level. I believe
it was like our first like major source of energy too. Like before we had like, you know, steam power and you know, electricity and things like that. So and I think our, you know, our understanding of those things, you know,
that's a great analogy.
It stemmed from that, you know.
Once
we had fire, it was easier to find things like that.
Totally, it gave us an energy advantage that allowed us to do things that weren't possible before, and that's what the quality discovery is. It's the hack into how the whole game works. People who are going to do it in temples and whatnot, they're basically going to be using the game the way the game tells you. Here's where the bonus stacking is. It's literally like that's how it works. That's how you. Nigh plus knee equals awesome. You know what I mean? It's like basic equations. So that's crazy.
The wheel came after, right? Fire, I think.
My time on that, not totally saw it. I think the wheel came pretty early, didn't it? We should look that up. Oh, that's exciting. I'll look it up later. Wheel, fire.
Cool.
I used to know.
Fire and the wheel.
But I do know that having studied the different biggies out there, fire, like we were kind of pretty savage pre-fire. After fire, we like start getting a lot more sophisticated. All right. Oh, it's still Mitchell, right?
Yeah, no, Mitchell already won it.
No, Mitchell win. Sorry, my bad. So we're back to.
Now it's Mitchell's turn to read it out.
We're going to do the last one of the sticking points.
Oh, never mind.
How does a desire for a sense of invincibility show itself? There we go. When is this problematic? How does a proper heroic pioneer truth seeker address this aspect of the human condition?
Okay. Humans have an innate desire to possess a sense of invincibility in the position of their platform for what they think and believe in, which needs to be accounted for. This most often shows itself in the form of wanting to find evidence to convince others of what one thinks or believes to be highest truth. This becomes problematic when it gets to the point where a person is more interested in proving a given narrative than they are about finding what the narrative of highest truth actually is, which causes foundational bias in the circuit of logic needed to maintain it. A proper truth seeker understands that the most important thing is to be a vessel that highest truth can best reveal itself through. which includes acknowledging that highest truth may not be what one thought it was when they first started believing in and advocating for some earlier conceptualization of it.
All right, I think I can go.
Good.
All right, so a sense of invincibility. So that's essentially when a person attempts to, they possess a feeling of a sense of invincibility over their position, platform, broader belief, over essentially their model that they're working with, and as such, this can become problematic when a person is essentially they're just trying to find things that support their model. They're like cherry picking things, or they're like using circular logic to support their their presumptions about the way of highest truth, rather than looking at highest truth first, seeing what one sees, and then writing that down and possibly using that to as an opportunity to challenge their model if there is something there that is challenging it. It's good to actually have some faith in what you're doing, but you should be having faith in highest truth and getting the most out of that, because that's ultimately what the goal is. If you think that your model or is essentially the is really good, then you should be willing to be open-minded when looking at highest truth, with that confidence. But you shouldn't take shortcuts, that are invalid, like cherry picking, or just looking for things that support your model rather than being open to the things that could, essentially change it, or give an opportunity to update it.
Usurp it, even like yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah.
And then
oh, go ahead, please.
Oh yeah. So a person who's a super awesome truth seeker will effectively keep an open mind about highest truth. Look openly. They can have confidence in their model, their way of understanding things, but they shouldn't get too caught up in the presumptions they made when first researching, or having essentially building an idea or philosophy about the way something works.
Indeed. Yeah, general theme here on these sticking points is that if you're seeking highest truth, the greater good, and with true purpose, then these will just be noble byproducts, and that's fine. When they come as part of for example, your reasoning is strong, if your morality is strong, then you will have a sense of invincibility that goes along with that, and that's rightly earned. But it should be a byproduct, never a goal. It just happens.
Yeah.
It just tends to happen as part of it, and that's great. And that's an indicator you're going the right way, but don't let that become the drug.
Okay. So the desire for a sense of invincibility oftentimes shows itself in wanting to accumulate like a whole body of evidence and supporting facts that prove that the understanding, the conceptualization of the model that one has is actually true and indeed correct and, well, invincible to a certain, essentially. This is a noble desire overall, but it can become problematic when the desire to want to simply feel invincible and to win, knowing that your model is the best in town or whatever, it takes over, and the pursuit of highest truth and the pursuit of wanting to always challenge oneself and challenge one's model and what it is, that essentially it becomes lost. Like one loses focus and they stop pursuing that in the favor of wanting to just simply feel invincible. It doesn't really work, because if you really want to be invincible, you need to sort of look to yourself, look to your model, look to whatever it is inside of yourself, to see basically what are the weak areas that need to be worked on, so that one can actually have a more invincible, like a legitimate invincibility to an argument or whatever the case might be. Because that's what true invincibility is, not this illusion of just simply feeling as though you're winning, or because you have like a whole bunch of facts that you've cited, research papers and whatnot, but they're all cherry-picked data, as Ben said, and that's not really that. That's just yeah, essentially it's just you picking and choosing whatever kind of ideas you like that support your narrative, and that's not what it's about. So proper truth seeker pioneer will address this aspect of the human condition by understanding that it is simply a driver that like one is trying to always pursue highest truth, and in the process of doing that, they're going to naturally become more and more invincible. But they shouldn't try to actually pursue invincibility as a thing in and of itself. It can also, it could probably help every now and then. You could just sort of like maybe focus on it a little bit more to be like, how can I help to become more invincible? But it should always be under the premise of wanting to find highest truth and challenge oneself, because that's how one becomes invincible. Essentially, they look for truth that challenges their model and causes them to have to reshape it, remodel it, and have to look at it from a different kind of conceptualization, and that makes it stronger, and then they're able to feel what that feels like to be invincible. And that's what it really feels like to be invincible, not trying to just simply pretend like it's invincible when it's really not, or avoid having to put the work in to make it invincible, essentially. I think it's that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, sense of invincibility is the last of the senses we'll be discussing, and these senses that that humans want to have, or at least something like them, and it basically means that someone wants to feel strong in their platform of their models of thought and belief systems and stuff like that. It often shows itself where people want to find evidence to convince other people of that what they think or believe is highest truth. This can be a problem when it creates the desire to prove and just prove the narrative that they already wanted to believe in, instead of actually finding out what the narrative highest truth actually is, which no one has the entirety of. we should all know because of history. And so leads to things like circular logic and foundational biases. The proper hero pioneer truth seeker addresses this by focusing on making himself into a vessel for highest truth to show itself, not focused on proving any given particular narrative of it. So it doesn't matter what position you started with in your investigations, you want to actually have some kind of thing that you can look into in your model. You want to have like an update button. Don't forget to include that, so that no matter where you are, you'll always be able to press that.
Well said. All righty, so that is that. So now it goes to Glenn, and we are kind of moving into addressing all the other kind of things floating out there. So we just have a couple more before then. What is a critical foundational bias that has been discovered by Hodler research? What are some key components of this bias? What is an implication of this? How is the situation to be rectified?
Right, so a critical foundational bias that has been discovered through mojo journalism is that most models of thought and belief systems are primarily influenced by only a few of the 32 gender mojos that are a forensic fact.
I think there's an updated one.
All right.
Did you update it?
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
Because I have an updated one.
I don't have that.
But I don't know, maybe you updated it even more. Because what he said up until then lined up with it.
It's Mitchell. Which email are you on? Are you on the new one?
I'm on the one from February 2nd at 9. Wait, hang on. No, I actually emailed that to myself then. It would have been sent.
The one I have is from 8:23 p.m. on that day.
Yeah.
Well, 8:23 my time, I think.
It's not that one. It was sent with the link to the
Oh,
Hangout
with the link to
yeah,
today's
there were
Hangout?
two, not today's, to the one last Thursday.
Right.
So
I'm saying
sent.
that one was sent at 8:23 p.m. my time.
8:23 p.m. Oh, 8:23? I think it's 8:23. Then that should be it. Yeah.
Yep.
Does
Yeah,
that
because
sense
that's the one
assurance?
that's the one, because basically the other one that was sent on that day has all the beats.
Yeah.
But there's
This
another
has
one that
two.
just has 2 beats.
Yep, that's
a sense of sureness and a critical foundational bias.
Okay.
And
Whoever
those
has
two are
that-
different from that one, if that makes sense.
Okay, you got whoever has that, go ahead and read that out, please.
That would be Glenn.
I mean, but no, he doesn't have it.
Oh,
Oh,
Yep.
okay. I can do it then. Critical foundational bias that has been discovered through mojo journalism is that most models of thought and belief systems are primarily influenced by only a few of the 32 gender mojos that are a forensic fact of natural law that Pollard research has brought to light. So how is this different from the last one?
I'm not sure, but that is the latest one, right?
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, I found it.
Okay, so Glenn,
Um,
maybe it's not so different, but anyway.
Should
I mean, it's probably different, but I'm not sure that sentence was different.
Yeah.
Should I read it out?
Yes.
Okay. So a critical foundational bias that has been discovered through mojo journalism is that most models of thought and belief systems are primarily influenced by only a few of the 32 gender mojos that are a forensic fact of natural law. That
Okay, so
Hodler
I think I must update it more. Here, I'm going to send a new one. I want to get this. Latest.
It's like you've updated quite a bit from the sounds of it. You made quite a few changes to the
Well, I
paragraph?
know I made change that sentence because
Okay.
I remember thinking that when the feeling is that saying that forensic fact, I think that's been established maybe in earlier chapters already, and I don't know if it was needed. So anyway, I sent an email. Let me know if someone gets it.
Okay. You could also put it to chat. Or Gmail
Right,
chat.
But okay. Is that a problem for seeing it on the screen, on the chat?
That should be fine.
No,
Fine.
I don't think so. Or you could do Gmail chat, GChat. That works best. That's the most
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
responsive.
I remember last time I didn't want to do it in the chat just because I was looking at the question in the chat as
Yeah.
well, but I could look at the question another place too.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's fine either way with me.
Okay. And here, I'll put in the chat then. There it is.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So finally, third time's the charm. A critical foundational bias that has been discovered through mojo journalism is that most models of thought and belief systems are primarily influenced by only a few of the 32 gender mojos. In the bubbles that emphasize models of thought and belief systems, only a few mojo designs are significantly represented, and primarily by males from cultures that were confused by their erroneous directive versus adaptive and male versus female biases, among other things, such as not being proficiently aware of the fundamentals of human qualia. This means that these models of thought and belief systems that are supposed to account for the human condition in its entirety are mainly being developed and disseminated by only a small portion of the human species collection of specialists, and from a demonstrably incomplete understanding regarding key elements of the human condition. This is a profound and pervasive foundational bias that has previously been unaccounted for by any models of thought or belief systems, which will need to be addressed correctly, requiring some significant degree of reformation in order to be in alignment with these aspects of highest truth that are now manifest and observable. Lengthy sentences, but it's good. Lots to pack in there.
If you get the gist, that's the main thing. You can get if you can answer the questions, you understand basic principles.
Yeah.
All right. I think I can do this.
All right.
All right. Let me just copy the question over here. All right. So a critical foundational bias that has been discovered by Podler research is that in the area of self-discovery in the human condition, there are only a few gender mojos that have a significant amount of representation in that bubble. And a component of this is for example, there's cultural influence on people that tends to cause certain genders to be more favored in certain bubbles over others, as well as a directive adaptive bias and so forth, which will cause certain mojos to be more likely to show up in areas of human condition and self-discovery than others. Gender and mojo. And
actually, on the point there, real quick, one nuance in that is that that influence, the directive adaptive bias and so forth, that will have some influence in who shows up in the bubble. But it also says that those who are already in that bubble and are therefore, saying what truth is, they almost for sure have those biases. So all their doctrines are infused with those biases.
Okay. So an implication of this is that there's only a small subset of the collection of specialists and a small, subset of the gender mojos, essentially humanity, researching the the human condition, which is a critical foundational bias. It means that there is a limited perspective looking at this phenomenon of innate nature of human qualia. So that's highly significant. It means that there's a lack of perspective here. This situation can be rectified by taking a more holistic and complete view and reformation of the human condition, a lens that actually accounts for all of the different mojo designs and gender mojos that exist within the collective, thus giving a much more complete understanding, much less limited understanding of the human condition.
Yes, you got, Ben, I just want to highlight that it's a limited and flawed. It's a few gender mojos out of the total, and those few also clearly have foundational biases such as the directive adaptives, directives are better, male females, males are better. Those limited few also are carrying that clearly incorrect conceptualization.
Yeah. It's not just that it's a small lens. It's also that there's like a reason that it's so
exactly
small. It's like corrupt. Like what they have is corrupt
to some degree.
Yeah, effectively.
Yeah, if you're doing a good job as being a truth seeker, you can make it as good as possible. But there's always going to be the fact that you're working off of something that only can get you so far, right? I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And biases are more likely to pop up, and so sometimes they do. Oh, I was muted. Oh man.
Where you going?
I went. I did the whole thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
we saw your mouth moving, or at least I did. I don't want to speak for the people, but
Oh,
I
man,
saw your
okay.
mouth like moving. Like I thought maybe you were just talking to yourself, like getting
Yes,
ready.
I thought too.
No. I was. Oh man, I'm blushing now. Okay, I'm gonna have to do it again. All right,
All right.
that's cool. That's fine. So, the critical foundational bias that has been discovered by Podler research, the Mojo journalism, has to do with the fact that the models that are being pushed by a lot of the people, like spiritual models and models of thought that have to do with the human condition, they're incomplete to a large degree because of the fact that most of them are being propagated by only a select few gender mojos, and also the fact that they're mostly tend to be male and they mostly tend to be directive. So there's a bias in that respect, and also most importantly, they have a lack of an understanding of the human qualia phenomenon and what that means. You can see how this is a serious issue, given that they're propagating an ideology that has to do with the human condition, but it's deficient in a lot of the very important areas that have to do with the human condition. So, some key components, yeah, I already mentioned that, but an implication of this is that because they're deficient in a lot of these areas having to do with the human condition, their model of thought can only get them so far. And people who follow these people that are pushing these theories, they're going to be working off of a model that is designed by, for example, like a Naiji male, who happens to be white, who happens to be, directive, and all has all these biases to them. But it's not going to be very much for somebody who doesn't fall within those parameters, and yet they're being told to be like this, live like this, and so that can be an issue. This situation can only be rectified by the theory being reformed to being able to basically account for all these, inadequacies that it has within it. Otherwise, it's always going to be to some degree, or to a large degree, lacking in understanding the overall human condition for what it really is in its fullness. Yeah.
And inadequacy can seem like a harsh word, but it is an accurate term in that when it comes to infinite mystery, we are always inadequate in our understanding. And so future generations will be less inadequate, and that's their goal, to remove those inadequacies, but they will still have some in theirs. Always, they'll have to tell the future generations, try to find more inadequacies with infinite mystery and fill those in. So, yep.
Exactly. I'll be right back.
So it's just Mitchell.
Sorry.
No worries. Make sure I was tracking.
write down. So, a critical I'm hearing feedback. I'm hearing feedback. No, I'm not. Okay, good. I don't know how I got turned on because I wasn't hearing it before. Maybe voice. But anyway, so a critical foundational bias that has been discovered by Paddler research is that most models of thought of belief systems out there are going to be mainly influenced by a select few of the 30 gender merges. And some major components of that are, besides just the fact that few gender merges are represented, there tends to be often a directive superior to adaptive bias, frequently, maybe not always, and a male superior to female in various ways bias. And one that bias that they all share is obviously just not being aware of these basic quality discoveries they've made. And so an implication of this is so all these models of thought and belief systems are working with people that from a limited selection of these qualia of this more complete qualia pantheon that we have that drives us, and they also are working with an incomplete understanding from that based on the biases just discussed, which can easily be led into because of the fact that they're all working with a limited selection to begin with. And so this situation can be rectified by properly accounting for the discoveries we've made and then making all of the appropriate reformations that are implied by those discoveries.
Boom. All right. So, dun dun dun. I think it's the last one before we start getting into it. All right. Let's close out setting the scene here. Okay. So, what is the founding premise of the highest truth open table? What does this mean for pilot practitioners? What does this allow for? What situation is possible from this contextual setting? Glenn, why don't you go since you didn't get?
No, I went. I did the. This is Ben's.
Okay. So then it's to Ben.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Sensing model of thought or belief system can be understood and evaluated based on universal rogue pioneer truth seeker principles. This is the founding premise for the highest truth open table. Other practitioners can come from any cultural, professional, or religious background, as long as they are all united in seeking highest truth, which means acknowledging aspects of highest truth wherever they are found, as well as the fact that potential truth should be investigated without bias and posited without coercion. This allows for speculative and faith-based possibilities for truth that can be responded and discoursed on, but without imposing anyone an obligation of acknowledging possible truth as truth intelligence will be manifest to them in their own way. In this contextual setting, fellow truth seekers can agree on what is currently manifest, but honorably disagreeing on things that are still speculative or faith-based until some aspect of discovered or demonstrated, thus deciding to debate in some definitive fashion without any unnecessary controversy or contestation.
I'm hearing
I'm getting a lot of
like I'm not even talking and it's just
I actually heard feedback as I was saying.
Yeah.
I need to wear headphones.
It was like distracting. Like
I could hear myself, but I think it would be bothersome if I was like if I couldn't hear myself.
Yeah,
that makes any sense.
Is it on my end?
It is on your end.
I think so, Coach. I think it's because the speakers, they loop back after they come out of the speaker and then they get fed into the microphone.
Yeah. The speakers go into the mic. Yeah, exactly.
So will the headphones take that away?
I think, yeah, definitely. It always seems to work.
Okay. Better?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Bam. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you have two people and you're in coach like with Jillian or something, then using headphones is kind of, problematic. But if it's just you, I think headphones make a lot of sense.
And for the future, I'd like to make that better. So actually, I think maybe we'll get one of those like splitter things.
Yeah, splitter. Yeah, exactly. So you can have 2 people with headphones, and yeah.
Ah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know. Does it suck wearing headphones,
Actually,
Coach?
headphones actually feels kind of cool. I feel like we're on a spaceship towards enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly.
Roger that.
I know it feels nice to sometimes not have to wear them, though, right? I mean, so I can see why you would feel the desire to want to be like, oh, let me just.
No, but these are nice. These are nice and comfy, and no, a 2-hour hangouts, no problem.
All right, cool.
Oh, on the Sundays I like to pace, so that might be a thing.
You need wireless headphones.
Wireless headphones.
Like yeah, you could have actually because of the microphone, that wouldn't work, but you could have a wireless headset that has a microphone on it. You could you can definitely do that. It might take a little bit of technical skill to get that all set up, but it's possible.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Because I think our hangars are so cool. I feel like we're like Star Trekking through the Enlightenment land. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yeah, I feel cool. I got a big screen.
You could literally probably be in the kitchen, in the washroom, whatever. You could be talking to us.
That's cool functionality, but also just it would go like a little headset. That'd be nice.
It's like recording,
Another possibility is if you have a phone coach. I'm not sure if you do. You could be like a separate member of the Hangout, but you could have your phone or something, and maybe like Jalene could have the use the computer. That's another possibility.
Because the static happens on the Sundays too.
Oh yeah, but
Okay.
it's usually like lowering your volume. It's gets around the issue and stuff.
Yeah, I do. I think it does come up as an issue.
Okay. So we'll talk with Jalene next time on Sunday. Before we go on, we'll talk a little bit about some options.
All right, I think I can do this one. So basically, the founding premise of the highest truth open table refers to basically that everybody, doesn't matter where they come from, doesn't matter what religious background it is, doesn't matter what part of the world, if they're all essentially pursuing highest truth, then that essentially makes them all truth seekers, and that's the only requirement that one needs to basically fill, if you will, in order to be in the the truth open table, because it's the only requirement is essentially that you need to be a truth seeker, and anyone can be a truth seeker. Essentially, that's what that is. So that's the premise. What does it mean for Podler practitioners? I think that basically what it means for Podler practitioners is.
So Glenn, I think you actually already answered this question in the first one.
Okay.
You kind of combined them. Yeah, because the founding premise is basically the principles that we have stated already as seeker principles. That is how we conduct ourselves and measure everything. And you basically said that, and you said that lets people come from any background as long as they're seekers. That answers the second question. So you already answered both 1 and 2.
Okay. This basically allows for anyone and everyone to basically pursue truth in whatever form and fashion that works best, acknowledging the fact that whatever truth happens to be found, wherever it may be found, has to be accepted for the truth that it is. And wherever there is a potentiality for truth being discovered, that one should, as a truth seeker, should pursue those trails wherever they may lead, in order to try and attain the most highest and the most biggest truth that they could possibly attain. And if there are certain areas that are more speculative, then those areas are areas where truth seekers are allowed to basically hold a position that that they have certain personal ideas as to theories that they hold on what those could possibly mean. But because it's still speculative, it's more yin, and there's not as much of a firmness there, and so that's where truth seekers may disagree with one another. But where there is truth, there should be in accordance with all the truth seekers that are aware of that. And if they aren't aware of that, then they should become aware of that. And then once are aware of it, then they accept it and acknowledge it for what it is. So yeah, I mean, does that get it all there? Okay. I'm just gonna read over it a little bit more.
I'm just saying again, I think you kind of answered those last two in one sort of push.
Arch or whatever.
Yeah, arc, exactly. All right, yeah, you got it.
Suave. It's hard to describe some of the new.
I know what you mean, yeah, but you kind of did two arcs. The first one got 1 and 2, and the second one got 3 and 4.
Ben, you already went, or did you still,
No, I didn't yet.
need to go? Okay. I was wondering about that. I wasn't sure.
All right, I think I can go.
Ready?
So since any model of thought can be evaluated from highest truth seeking principles, this is the founding premise for, openly. This is the founding premise for the highest truth open table. And this is also essentially where, different people from different backgrounds, all with different beliefs, they come together and they share different beliefs and ideas that they have about highest truth, and they look at each other's ideas in an open way, acknowledge when, through seeker feeds or what have you, when highest truth is actually demonstrated or shown or elucidated in some way, will also, allowing for speculative disagreement if there's something that hasn't necessarily been shown or proven yet. What this means for polar practitioners is polar practitioners, of course, come from a variety of different backgrounds, faiths. They have different ideas about things. But as being polar practitioners, if they're essentially being a polar practitioner means you're trying to follow highest truth to the best of your ability and know and grow yourself to the best you can. So naturally, being at the highest truth open table means that's a very good way for different polar practitioners to come together and exchange different thoughts and different things that they've proven, ideas they have about highest truth and natural law. And have very productive discourse doing that. This allows for people to be able to have their beliefs and their ideas while also while also being able to openly, openly share and take in consideration the beliefs and ideas of others as well. What they've found, things that the speculations they have, while not being disrespectful, while allowing for people to come to highest truth in their own way, because naturally for some people it might be harder than others to see where somebody's coming from, or to reach an agreement with somebody. So that has to be accounted for. But of course, there's the other elements that you have to actually be actively seeking it in an open way. It's very ineffective to just hold to your own model and just shut everyone else out and just be like, I'm gonna preach about Christianity and not be open to any other ideas about anything else anyone has to say. Then that's not really an actual highest truth exchange, because highest truth is it is what it is. So if you're wrong, then you're wrong. So everyone at the table should keep that in mind. And a situation that's possible.
It's important to note that any model can be reformed into the Podler era of humanity, including Christianity, and that also within any of these things like Christianity, there is a wide spectrum of sects and variants on it, and those variants have a quite a bit of difference as far as their correctness or incorrectness on provable things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just gave Christianity as an example.
Right.
It could have been any model. It could have been Buddhism. It could be whatever.
Understood.
And a situation that's possible from this contextual setting is the sharing of various, philosophical thought and beliefs. There could be a disagreement in this area that can't be effectively worked out until some proof is given or something is demonstrated that actually shows how things are. A secret feat, for example, some rational evidence on the subject. And when that does happen, then that can settle the discussion, much more easily than just like endlessly speculating about it.
Good.
So.
Definitely. Oh, just a little thing on this, Ben. One thing I kind of learned when addressing these kinds of topics, they're very high intensity, very high stakes, is one thing that can be useful is, you guys may notice, sometimes I can be very skillful in my expression of things, but I will sometimes be vague while being clear. And I do that on purpose. Is you can get bogged down sometimes in an example. So generally, I always don't use examples unless I have to. So I'll say all the time, well, in history, humans have done this during wartime.
Mm-hmm.
That's solid. It definitely sets the scene for what I need to say. Everyone knows that's the truth, right? Everyone knows that's true. No one can really argue with that. And there's many examples that could be used. But ironically, if I chose any of the examples to use, I talk about a Kurdish war, I talk about a Soviet war, it will just bring in a whole lot of specific pushback to that example that really doesn't push back on the principle being made. And so if the principle can be expressed without that, sometimes it's very important when you talk about these kind of things, because it's people's beliefs. It's very high energy. They get very touchy. Is a lot of times, if you use, what happened during the Aztec thing, they might counter you on, well, Aztecs actually had this and that, and actually the Mayans were like this. And next thing you know, you're in a whole Aztecs versus Mayan history debate, and you were actually trying to talk about open truth table. So just a little thing to throw out there.
I didn't actually say anything about Christianity. I just said that I actually didn't mention any details about it. I just said that, like, if you are completely 100% like even your most speculative ideas, that this must be the way of things, right? And
right, exactly. But that's true. But I'll just mention that just saying the name is enough, because you're saying a principle of, don't stay wrong when you're wrong. And that's true. That's a principle. Don't stay wrong when you're wrong. Like Christians. Christians shouldn't stay wrong when they're wrong. And so that can sometimes, when you're just trying to get across a universal principle, if they may get engaged into a Christianity thing where actually if you just said all models need to update because they know more, and they don't, they'll have these problems. And everyone's like, that makes sense. And there's nothing there in the pushback. Mitchell, you probably used, I'm sure, in some like discussions where you're talking about
I do want to say though, I'm not exactly sure that's always the right thing to do, because if you, every once in a while, it's good to give an example to concretize what you're saying, so there's actually it registers more easily in your head what they're saying or what you're trying to say, because if you if you speak too abstractly too much, without ever coming back to an example, then a person might get lost.
Ben,
so that's
very true. Just that's absolutely true, and I often use that operating principle myself. What I'm distinguishing though is just sometimes in certain discourse, when it's either high energy, high stakes, or also here setting the scene, it can be a bit tricky when you're doing the initial set of the scene to use an example. It might be better after that. Just because it may take their mind off of the principle. It doesn't have to always, just saying something to consider. And if we are going to use examples, this has to be noted, we tend to mention monotheism a lot. That's a cultural fact. I do it too. So one thing that you're aware of is that if we're going to use examples to bolster, then you want to make sure you are strict about your rotation of using monotheism as an error-prone thing versus, Dharmic traditions versus academia. Do you know what I mean? Because I know myself, and I believe all of us share this. I don't think I'm saying anything you guys don't know. When we actually are just free talking, we do tend to, when we're pointing out the errors of models, we will sometimes,
reference
monotheism more than others. So I'm just right now trying to keep.
Okay. This is a slightly different point than you were making before about avoiding giving examples unless you have to when you're.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're related. It's actually an addendum related to what you said.
Well, it might be related, but it is slightly different.
Okay, but you're saying that sometimes it is good to use examples, and then I said, okay, yes, that's true, but it still can be trickier when you're setting the scene. It's sometimes good when you're setting big picture to keep it a little vague, so there's no snags when you're getting your momentum with people kind of hearing your voice. But you're saying
I said it more towards the end of the beat rather than the beginning, which is more focused on saying the scene of what I'm talking about. Because technically I'm not actually transitioning into a greater subject here. I'm more so like giving a complete thought. So it was more towards then, after I said what specifically a highest truth open table was.
Right. There's the beginning, setting the scene of a paragraph. There's also what we've been doing so far, talk about seeker stuff. This is kind of setting the scene in general before getting into all the other players. So there's short scale setting a scene, and there's larger scale. So
that's true. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just want you guys just something to be aware of. I've learned over the years, having talked specifically this conversation with people.
Mm-hmm.
That
I understand it.
It can be a little tricky.
It's something that I see the value in keeping it a little bit more vague. In that, like, if you start off with too many like concrete examples, I've experienced this a little bit myself, in that it can be kind of distracting, not only for the other person but also for yourself, because then you actually in your own mind you kind of like go into that direction. So like, what was I talking about, like the original thing? But then also it could be,
if it's provocative, there's a chance that they will jump on a hot word.
But right. I feel like this whole thing could be considered that way. Like if you give any example in this whole set of beats, like whether it be a sense of infinitability, exclusivity, that could be seen as like a hot topic. So I feel like every once in a while,
I don't think in the beats. No, I agree. Every once in a while, it's fine.
Because there's a lot of beats here, and there's a lot of things to talk about. Like if we started out by going through all these, I think.
I'll just say two things. One, I hear what you're saying, Ben, and it could just be a style difference. But I'll just say that myself, I didn't use an example for any of the setting the scene. I believe the principles are transmitted clearly and strongly, and I purposely did not use any example because I knew I was going to be taking them all on in turn after the scene was set. So I kind of didn't want to
Jump the gun,
so to speak, of getting into the operation of actually kind of my take on the models.
Yeah. So, of course, when you are saying the scene, whether it be a speech or an introduction to paper or what have you, you do often mention specifically what you're going to talk about.
Right.
There's also, I think, an issue of like certain examples being too specific and not really able to capture the principle as fully as, like sometimes the examples kind of focus on certain aspects of the principle, but not the entire principle overall you're trying to basically get across to the other person, right? Or the audience.
When you're going with a big principle, a big concept, sometimes they'll either think that's not me, or you're calling me out. So it can kind of make them go one of those ways. But basically, Ben, just whenever you give an example, this is actually a psychological, I think, fact. It will make a person's psyche in a binary sense, ones and zeros.
Yeah, and it depends on your audience too.
They'll have to have some reaction to that.
In your audience, then what is there to worry about if you mention Christianity? Because like they're not going to be, they're not going to feel like they're being called out or anything like that. If you give an example of somebody who's not in an audience, then it's,
okay. Just Ben, I honestly can't agree with that assessment. And you and I may have a different take, and this is personal stuff. But for me personally, I didn't
really say much there. I don't think I really disagree with you.
No, I don't think we generally do. I'm just trying to be helpful, because this conversation, when we'll be having it, it's good to kind of know the energy of it. I've known a lot of Christians in my life, and I've known good ones I thought were like seekers that I could talk with. But I know if I had mentioned how seekers need to watch out for a certain error in general, and then mention them as a part of that, their hackles would go up. For a fact. I know for a fact. And maybe different Christians are different.
But I'm saying if you're not talking to a Christian, or you're not talking to any of those people.
Okay, so that brings up the next thing. This is good. It's a good call. Right now, we're talking about this publicly, so we're giving Padre's position. So my kind of given on this is that now possibly and definitely in the future, people from all kinds of backgrounds will be watching this. So I'm going to given at some point Christians will watch this broadcast.
Probably, yeah.
That's a mental thing. That's a mental thing I do in my head. It might be helpful. I'm imagining Hindus and Sikhs and Buddhists and atheists and all those
everybody, the whole group.
I'm imagining this. I'm imagining the seeker. This is what Nexie did the spell on me. She's like, imagine the seeker versions of those models are coming here to actually listen. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm just thinking that the Christians in our audience, the Christian seekers, they might get their hackles up at being what they perceive as being singled out. Although I don't think it's how you meant it. It was like a general example, but I could see how that could be misperceived by someone from that particular position.
Of course, you are going to go into each one, so
I am.
Depending on the order in which you do so, that could feel like they're being singled out too.
Well, it's just a good question. Let's go talk about this. Two things. The first thing is, generally, when you're going to operate on things, when you're talking about the operating procedure, you can just kind of agree that that's how we'll do it, and then get into the various cases. But then as far as the ordering, I talked this last time. The ordering I went with was more kind of like how it occurred. I didn't pick anyone like who's smartest to who's dumbest or anything like that. I actually went with ancient people's beliefs, then the two arcs of West and East, monotheism or Abrahamic versus Dharmic, and then the post, like modern period after that. So I kind of went with historical arc. And I don't think anyone could disagree or say they're being singled out, since I'm kind of going with historical arcs. And I'm not rating anyone based on that. I'm just kind of going like in time. These are things that kind of popped up. Ben, for that reason.
When you're giving an example, you actually are stating that you aren't actually giving any direct, meaning. You're just saying that this is one instance of it. You know, and I did clarify there could be multiple. You know, I could have picked any model out there. You know, so
No,
it really doesn't. You know, it seems like
it's not a big
I should
deal.
be able to give an example. You know, every once in a while if it's a.
Sure. Okay, and just note, Ben, I totally conceded that, which is when I brought in my addendum to that. If this is a style difference, myself, I tend to try to keep specific examples out during preambles and setting the scene and initial stuff, and then I do pepper it in more later, but you could bring it in earlier, and some could even wait longer. So that's a personal preference thing. I understand that. So let's go with your personal preference is to use more examples than I do. That's fine.
I'm not even sure I necessarily, because I'm not necessarily in a headspace that's totally focused on like saying the scene, because these beats aren't exactly like, you know, we're doing this over like multiple weeks, so that kind of ritualizes it differently. If I was in an actual situation where I was like, you know, setting the scene for somebody on this topic, we kind of are, but we're doing it more in a you know, over several weeks and months.
But you do see though that the way that I myself set the scene did so without using any specific examples. No specifics were done as they're written, and that's one way of doing it. And then you said that you felt that it flowed naturally for you to add one in there. So I'm saying those both can be allowed. That's just a difference in style. So then,
I mean, it did at the time. I'm not, you know, I could always improve. Maybe I'll find later that it's more effective if I don't do that.
Yeah,
you know,
and like I said, there's also range differences too. So either way is fine. So I'll just mention, if you do decide that your style has more examples in it, then you'll want to be, the more examples you use, you want to be more aware of your rotation.
Yeah, sometimes I like to just give examples just offhandedly, like not even, not like spend too much time on any examples, just be like, you know, like this, for example, you know, just to sort of reconnect.
Okay. Again, it's a good point. It might be helpful for you. I also do that naturally. I've kind of just, you know, shoot from the hip kind of style, let my model sort of flow through me. However, having had this conversation right here, this whole CnC conversation many times in my life with different people, there is a, if you just kind of talk off the cuff with no thought to your arc, there is a tendency for your biases to come out. For example, all of us here, I think probably have had more pressures put on us, or maybe seen more of the errors specifically of certain monotheistic traditions than maybe other things. And I think a lot of people could say that from the US and Canada and so forth. And so because of that, without thinking, when you go to just off the cuff, reach into your bag, for example, of this is what a model does when it goes off the rails, the chances that you're going to pull out of your quiver an arrow that is aimed for monotheism is just high. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah, that's true. It's good to think about these things. I think.
Yeah, totally. So you didn't wrong. I just brought up something exactly. It's good to think about and just to be aware of it.
It's not like it's not like you know, we should develop like some hard rule like you should never do this, but it's good to think about, like it's good to be purposeful on all of the decisions that you're making that could possibly have significant impact. And I agree. I think this could, you know, somebody could react negatively to that and so forth.
Yeah. I think, you know, all of us to a certain degree, we have certain anger issues a little bit as well, and we kind of might be like wanting, maybe unconsciously or subconsciously, to want to be a little bit adversarial, trying to be like, I want to, like, this is my moment to sort of like, you know, like strike at this, like, you know, thing that's like bugging me. But that's personal. That's on you a little bit, right? That's something that you need to be aware of and understand that in order for me to actually be a very good representative and a good ambassador of truth here, it would be actually wiser, more higher of me to want to go the route of keeping it a little bit more vague in this particular situation, and maybe use an example that you know is not going to be one that's going to cause any flare-ups. Maybe use something a little bit more far off that's a little bit more different, and it's sort of like a little bit related, but they're kind of like, you can tell that they're not going to be able to like make the connection immediately right there, at least. Maybe they, after when
or
they
do
go home,
if they do, it's got
But I think I slightly disagree because you could use any example, and anybody from that happened to be a representative of that could equally be as offended as Christian, I think.
Well, I think we've agreed that it pays to know, and there's difference in style. So again, all four of us have a slightly different style. So I definitely am aware that that should be allowed for. That's, like I said, Ben, it's not a hard and fast rule. But one thing I would I'd have to say, and I had to insist on, not even advise, I'd insist on this because it's truth. To understand how you really need to come at these beats, there needs to be a proper energy. And not that you guys weren't doing it. I'm just saying we should make yourself really aware of this. And this seemed like a good opportunity to mention it. You should feel a humming of intensity, like a vibration of, whoa, okay, trust me, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it in the back of your neck, in your gut, in your skin. When you actually talk with someone and going cool, and then it veers towards this conversation, and then you mention, oh, blah, blah, about what they believe in, and you feel them stiffen. They're still being friendly. Everyone does. No one doesn't not stiffen when you actually touch about what they believe in at their core.
Yeah, that's true.
So imagine everyone they're like a vibrating tuning fork. And so when you talk, and just we're going to get into every single principle of all these models in this section. So it's not but you're like, okay, let's approach this in the way that will be strongest and give the least problems. It reminds me of certain games where you have to kind of build into them. You can go any way you want, but if you cause too much static early on, you can stymie your progress.
Yeah, and also you can always say that, well, somebody's going to someone's going to react negatively, but that's sort of like an appeal to futility. That doesn't mean that you should try to be as smooth as you consciously can be. Like obviously that's I don't disagree that there's always going to be some kind of
what I said was
I see both points though.
Was that you should try to use maybe something further off than Christianity, but any model has seekers,
right?
Who support that and are of that. So the model itself, like choosing a model that's not as popular or is further off, isn't, I don't think is going to help. But I do agree you should smoothen that exchange.
Again, I think we're talking a bit about style differences, but I think you guys both brought up a truth that's relevant, and so I mentioned here. The thing about them taking offense, though, Ben, I do agree that we should hold off on because of the premise of this section, which is that we're talking as a given to other seekers. And so that will set that we're going to anticipate a positive. But very important, because some people heard me discussing things, all of us discussing things, Mitchell and Ademus on different things and whatnot. Okay, clearly being firm, even being dismissive when necessary, is not something that we have a problem with. Calling out, being negative, that's not a problem, but it's a question of audience and situation. So here we're talking to other seekers and seekers who may eventually come to our shores, and we're going with that as the given. Ben, if I was in a different audience, for example, I already know that they hold certain positions and have certain errors or whatever, or they've done certain things, or we've already had certain conversations already, then I can go more specifically hard hitting immediately. So it's not wrong actually to go both ways. It's a question of the situation, the audience. So here, the situation is goodwill. We're trying to extend goodwill outreach. And then the intended audience is the most seeker cream of the crop of everyone out there. So whatever model they're from, we're actually looking for their top seeker people. And so that's who I think we're talking to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But obviously that audience situation is not all the time. And so different audience, different situation, you slide your dials.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because you're able to, like, the premise, the position that I think that we're trying to go from is we're trying to talk to people that are seekers and then get them into our fold to see that we have truth that we can offer them that's going to benefit them. and that's going to benefit us because then we're going to be, getting more people involved in our culture, getting more people involved in this truth, and they're going to then spread the seed that is Podlair and to more and more seekers and more people out there, given their gifts and abilities, and they're going to be able to communicate it in ways that we personally are not able to. So that's the benefit of having more and more numbers.
And just to emphasize that I don't think anyone did anything wrong. Ben, I don't think you did anything wrong, and I think you guys both said truths. I think it's a big thing, and it had all the truths, and there's personal style as well. As long as we're aware of the situation and setting, like I said, which is goodwill outreach towards the best of the best, the shiny seekers from all the different lands, and that's kind of what we're going for right now. Yeah, make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense
to me.
Cool. All right. Where are we at now?
I think it's already 7:30, Coach.
Okay, but
that's true.
But has Mitchell done it?
Mitchell, have you gone yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. That's it.
We'll wait for you.
And then I guess I'll do it. It's fine. I'm just not ready. It's just kind of distracted.
No worries.
Should be just a few minutes.
That was a very important, good conversation to have.
Yeah, because we don't really talk too much about, what the purpose of having these broadcasts is. Because, we do spend a lot of time in these hangouts sort of talking off the cuff and doing these beats. It feels in a way that feels natural for us. So we're going to say things that may not necessarily be, the best way to approach a situation. So I think it's good to have, a healthy amount of giving suggestions for people to take into consideration, for how they might approach a similar situation in the future.
Yeah. And like I said, our natural style thing is good. This can be another natural style we develop, kind of like a variant. And I'll be more aware of that is as we do different kinds of themed areas or different kinds of work, then we'll kind of maybe just as like a band, we'll kind of tune up of what's our purpose here before we go forward. So this may be on me. I had not taught this course before. When I teach this in the future, I think I'll make more of a thing in the beginning about setting the scene for us about what this is intended for. So this is me learning too.
Yeah. We're all learning. Yeah. Best practices and how to do it the best way.
Oh, and just to clarify, I don't have anything. I might be slightly biased against, towards choosing Christianity as an example, but I wasn't expressing any significant amount of anger towards Christianity.
No. I didn't sense anger or contempt there. I was just noting that in the situation we find ourselves in, the audience might get thrown.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the founding premise of Highest Truth Open Table is that knowledge about a belief system of all shapes and sizes can be discussed and evaluated by these universal pioneer truth seeker principles that we are discussing. And so, what that means for public practitioners is that they can come from a cultural, professional, religious background as long as they are seeking highest truth and basically deciding to look for truth without bias and talk about it in a way that's not coercive. And so this allows for speculative and faith-based possibilities to be respected and honored without them trying to take up kind of too much of the stage and coercing people to genuflect to them without that manifesting to them personally. And so what's possible in this context is we can have as an honorable discussion as truth seekers on the truths that are manifest to us, and while honorably disagreeing on the speculative possibilities. And so you can then, and allowing that could be decided at a later time, which prevents unnecessary controversy and contestation.
Oh, nice. All right, that's a perfect stopping point because we're now going to get into it. We'll start next time with animism. All right, here we go. It's fun. Seriously, it almost sounds like it's out of like a Kung Fu Jedi book, but literally, this is what humans have come up with. It sounds like cool spells. It really is. These are the best things for consciousness humans have come up with so far. So exciting. All right. Have a good evening, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.
All right. Have a great night, guys.
Nice.
Good night, guys.